Hi there, and welcome to this Tuts Plus course, How to Create a Typographic Poster. My name is Laura Kyung, and I am a graphic designer based in Germany. Posters are one of the earliest forms of advertisement. They're one of the most eye-catching pieces of design. They're everywhere. And in order to engage viewers, posters need to be well thought out, legible, and attractive. In this course, we will focus on the basics of creating a complete typographic poster. We will look for inspiration on the Envato Elements website, set up a ready-to-print Photoshop file, and develop an attractive composition as we cover different tools in Adobe Photoshop. You will not only learn about how to create an impactful minimalist poster, but one that will also be technically correct for professional printing and online sharing. I am excited to get started, and I look forward to seeing you in the course. Hi everyone, welcome back to this course. Let's kick things off by looking into the creative process of designing a typographic poster. In this lesson, we will take a look into finding inspiration, finding fonts, and creating a headline for our poster. We are on the Envato Elements website, and this is a great library that is updated weekly with really good quality images, fonts, videos, and templates. So let's take a look at the photo section. And we can already see that they have themed collections. And our aim right now is to look for any kind of images that jump to our eyes. So I see a lot of color in the Seascapes collection. I'll go into that. And like I mentioned, we just need to scout for images that are interesting to us. For example, I find this image here interesting. And what I find interesting about it is the color and the strings are floating away. So for me, this image is very pleasing, so I will download it. And the great thing about the Envato Elements website is that you can download images without a license to comp them first or try them on your project. And once you decide to use them, you can license them. So let's go back into the section here. And let's keep finding images. Now, there is no such thing as too many images or the right or wrong images. I believe that the more images that you can get, the more your creativity can expand because you can see what the possibilities are. So I'll get as many images as I can in different varieties. Now, in the real world, you would usually get a client brief, a creative brief, from your client. And this is where you would get some information and some inspiration for the poster. But because we don't have that, this is a fictional poster, so we are our own client and we get to make those decisions. The great thing is that we can push the envelope as far as we want. So let's keep finding some more images. So let's take a look at what kind of images we've collected. And we have a theme going on, which is great. We have a lot of color, a lot of movement, and seascape. So to find a font, we need to keep these things in consideration because we don't want to use a font that is clashing with our images. So let's go into the font section. And let's take a look at what we've got. So something like this or this would have too much personality. And we want to find something neutral. So maybe let's take a look at the sans serif category and see what we can find. Fonts like this are perfect because they come across as friendly because they're rounded. So let's download this without a license. And let's go back. Something like this would also be great, mainly because it's just a neutral font, a traditional classic font that will blend well with our poster. So let's download that one as well. And the great thing about here is that you can go into the designer's other fonts. And I'm already seeing something that I like, and that would be this. I like the disruptive alternates, and the alternates would be a second option to a character. So for example, this is a regular H, and this will be its alternate. Or for example, here is the E, and this will be its alternate. So I think this would work great for a poster because it gives us more room to play. Let's download that one as well. And let's take a look at what we have. So we have many images, and we have about 3 fonts here that we can work with. The way I like to tackle the headline is I look at all the images that I have and think of the words that I could come up with to describe them. And we can go into our browser and type fish synonym, or we can even type fish in the meaning. Even though we already know the meaning of the word, it's good to read and see what other words are related to it. So for example, here, catch, we try to catch, concealed, search. Thesaurus and dictionary.com are really good options for this because it just gives us so many words that we can play with for a headline. So let's go into the dictionary.com. And this doesn't have to be anything complicated. Sometimes just the simplest words can lead us to something really good. And I can already see something that's calling my attention, and that would be aquatic. And something helpful to do is to visualize the word on a poster to see how the forms are going to look like, the letter forms. Nautical is another great word. So let's try to go with aquatic, and there is no right or wrong here. You can go for really any headline that will make sense for the poster. So I see aquatic, I see live. I really like the word live. And let's go back here, and we have lots of life and movement and color. We can use aquatic life in color. Aquatic life in motion would also be great because there's so much movement with the fish. So let's go with that. Let's try to go with aquatic life in color or aquatic life in motion. I think we have 2 great options there. We have a really good selection of fonts, images, and a couple of headlines. In the next lesson, I will show you how to go about the process of elimination to choose the right elements for our poster. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. Choosing the right images and fonts for a poster can be a daunting task. In this lesson, I will show you how to go through the process of elimination by analyzing the elements that we collected. Let's dive in. I have opened the images from the previous lesson and put them into Photoshop so we can take a look at them. You will notice that the group on the left side has a lot more movement, busy backgrounds, there are some see-through species, we have a few close-up shots, and it's a lot more dynamic compared to the shots on the right side. But some of these images have a very extreme depth of field. So for example, something like this would make it difficult for us to cut out because the front of the fish is in focus, but the back is blurred, and it has a lot of small details. So that would make the image very tedious to work on. And the light source is very different on each of the images. Let's take a look at the group on the right side. And these are very colorful, in comparison to the images on the left side. They still have a sense of movement. It's not a lot, but it is still there. The images were sourced from 2 different photographers, but they are similarly shot. And the isolated background will make it easier to work with. Since we're creating a typographic poster, we want the font we choose to shine. So we need to choose images that will complement the font instead of overpowering it. So for this course, we will be using the images on the right side. Now you have to keep in mind that we won't be using all of the images, but for now we need options, especially when it comes to color combinations and the direction the fish are moving to and the placement that they will have in the composition that we will create later. So now that we've chosen our images, let's look at the fonts. In order to install the fonts, we need to decompress the zip file. So we can do this by double-clicking on each of the files, and this will open 3 folders. Head over to the font book, and I will be creating a new collection named Envato. And this is because the fonts are not licensed yet, and when I license them, that's when I'll move them into my regular collection. So grab the 3 folders and drop them into the font book, into the Envato collection. And now we have our 3 fonts installed, and let's head over to Photoshop to see what they look like. In the previous lesson, we mentioned that we could use one of 2 headlines, aquatic life in motion or aquatic life in color. So I will type aquatic life in motion. And let's choose the first typeface. So that would be Morton. There's one. The second is BW Quinta Pro. And the third one is BW Stretch. Now we know that BW Stretch has alternates in it, so let's bring our character panel and select alternate. Let's take a look at the first typeface, Morton. And this is a very classic neutral font. It is on the narrow side, and it could really go with any theme that we choose to go with. And then we have BW Quinta Pro, which is wider and softer with round edges, and that's what makes it come across a little bit friendlier than other fonts. And last we have BW Stretch. And this is the opposite of Quinta. It is tall and narrow, but it contains alternates. And this could make it a lot of fun to play with because it has different widths. If we look at the images we've chosen, we can use BW Stretch and try to maybe weave some of these forms through the characters. And I think we could create something interesting with that. Since we're designing a typographic poster, we need to choose a font that will stand out but won't clash with the colorful images. And I think BW Stretch is a great option because it is legible and it still has personality, and it can add something interesting to the composition. So now we have our elements, and in the next lesson, I will show you what are the final assets and the software that we'll be using for this course. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. In this quick video, I will show you the images, fonts, and software you need to follow along with the lessons and create your own typographic poster. Let's briefly talk about organization. I've organized the fonts and images into 2 separate folders. In this one, I have the font BW Stretch. This font is tall, narrow, and includes alternates. It will be a lot of fun to experiment with it. In this other folder, I have the images, and we won't be using all of them, but we need options to see what will work best for our poster. Place these 2 folders somewhere easy to find on your computer. You will also need to make sure to install the fonts on your computer. You can do so by unzipping or decompressing the files we downloaded from the Envato Elements website. As a result, you will get a folder, and you can drag this folder into the font book to install it. Like anything with design, there is no right or wrong software to use. For this course, I will be using Adobe Photoshop. While it is mainly used for photo manipulations, it also has some great design features, which makes it perfect for our course. If you don't have the application, you can download it from the website. You can also get a 7-day free trial if you don't want to commit right away. If you will be using a different software, keep in mind that the shortcuts and some of the layouts won't look the same. Now that we have everything we need, we're ready to get started. I'll see you in the next lesson. Hi there, welcome back. In this lesson, we will learn how to properly set up a ready-to-print Photoshop file. We will talk about the main settings when creating a new file, like size, resolution, and color mode. We will also learn how to use guides and the importance of using grids and margins. But first, let's reset our workspace so you can follow the tutorial along. Head over to the menu bar and select Window, Workspace, Essentials Default. This will reset your workspace so you can find the options easily. To create a new file, head over to File, New. Let's name our poster Typographic Poster. Poster sizes vary from country to country, and there is no right or wrong size to use. If you're working with a client, the size and quantity will be based on their budget. It is also best to talk to a technician from the printing house that you're using, because they can advise you as to what paper size and weight is best to use and how to economize on large quantity prints. For this project, we'll create a small poster. So head over to Preset and select International Paper, and under Size, select A4. This will set the width and height automatically. We can change the units and this won't affect the output of the poster, but it will help create a consistent layout. Since we're working on a poster to print, it will be useful to use a unit that you can actually measure with a ruler so you can get an idea of where things will roughly be. So in this case, I will be using centimeters. Choosing the right resolution is also very important. Setting a document that will be seen on screen versus a printed one is different. There are 3 main important settings. 72 dpi is used for screens, and this would be any images that we see on our phones, our TVs, our computer screens, or any kind of digital display. 150 dpi is used for newspapers and some magazines. 300 dpi is the highest quality document, and you will be using this if you're sending the document to a professional printing house. So let's set our resolution to 300 dpi. There are 2 main color modes, RGB and CMYK. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. This should only be used when the end product will be digital. So again, that will be our phones, TVs, computers, or any kind of digital display. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. CMYK is used for a file that will be printed, and it can be a professional printer or a studio printer because sometimes these actually have CMYK inks. So let's select CMYK, background contents white, and click OK. Now that we have our document ready, let's create some margins and grids. For this, we will be using guides. So head over to View, New Guide. We want to create a 1 centimeter margin all around the document. So let's set horizontal 1 centimeter and click OK. To create the bottom margin, we need to subtract 1 centimeter to the final size. So head over to View, New Guide, and subtract 1 centimeter to 29.7. That will be 28.7. And click OK. Now let's set the left and right margins. Head over to View, New Guide, and this time select Vertical Orientation and position 1 centimeter and click OK. For the right side margin, we need to subtract again. And that will be 20 centimeters. Click OK. We have the margins, and now let's set the grid. A grid system is a set of intersecting vertical and horizontal lines within a page. They're useful to create a well-balanced and structured layout. But on a bigger scale, they make it easier for other designers to work on shared projects because it will create a consistent layout. To create a grid, we need to take in consideration the amount of elements that we will have on the page. We won't have many elements, so we will be using a 3x3 grid. That means that we need to divide the final document size into 3 horizontally and vertically. Our document measures 29.7 vertically. So we need to divide this into 3, and let's get our calculator. The result is 9.9. So head over to View, New Guide, select Orientation Horizontal, and set the position to 9.9, and click OK. To create the second segment, we need to multiply this by 2. So multiply that by 2, and that's 19.8. Head over to View, New Guide, and set 19.8, and click OK. Now let's set the vertical guides. Horizontally, our page measures 21. Divided into 3 is 7. So we will need to create the guides at 7 centimeters and 14 centimeters. So head over to View, New Guide, and make sure you're selecting a vertical orientation. Set the position to 7 and click OK. And let's repeat that one more time. View, New Guide, and set the position to 14. Now we have the base of our document, and we're ready to work with other elements. In the next lesson, I will show you how to check and convert resolutions and color modes on images for printing. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back to this course. One of the most important steps to take when working with images for printing is to convert the images to the right color mode and resolution. Many images acquired from the internet are in low resolution and in RGB mode. In this lesson, we will take a look at how to prepare images for printing. For this specific project, we will be working directly in Photoshop, so the images we drop in a ready-to-print Photoshop document won't need to be converted. But this is a useful tip if you will be using images outside of Photoshop, let's say Illustrator or InDesign, and your end product will need to be printed. Or if you receive files from a client and need to check on the details to see if they're usable. Let's take a look. I have a folder with the images that we scouted from the Envato website, and let's choose an image and drop it into Photoshop. So here's how you can quickly check the color mode. If you go to the top of where the files are, you'll notice here that it says RGB. So that means our file is in RGB color mode. To change the color mode, head over to Image, Mode, CMYK. You will get a warning about the color profile and click OK. If you look at the top where the open files are, you will notice that now the RGB has changed into CMYK. To check the size of the image, head over to Image and Image Size. If we're sending a file to print, we need the images to be at 300 dpi, and these are dots per inch, and this is the amount of data that there is in a square inch of an image. So we can see here that our image is already at 300 dpi. But let's say that we need to send this image to be used on a website, and we need to make it smaller, so we could here change the resolution to 72 dpi and click OK. If we're sending this image to print, then we would change it to 300. Now you have to take in consideration the width and the height. At 300 resolution, the width and the height are 33.87 centimeters. And this is the maximum size that you can use this image at. If you decide to use the image larger than this specific size, then you will start to lose the quality. So let's proceed and click OK. When you convert images from RGB to CMYK, you will notice that some of the color will be a little bit dull, So this is the step where you can change the highlights, contrast, hue, and saturation. And once you're happy with that, then you can head over to Save. To save the file, head over to File and Save As, and a new window will open. I suggest saving the file with an extension at the end, especially if you're working with many images. So for example, I will be adding an R, and this will stand for revision. And then you can change the format from JPEG to TIFF because TIFF holds better the quality of an image, and especially if you will be using this on InDesign and Illustrator. Now we won't need to convert any of these images because we will be dropping the original files into our ready to print Photoshop file, which is already set to CMYK and 300 dpi. So they will get converted automatically. But this step is really useful if in the future you will be using Illustrator or InDesign and your end product will be a print design project. So we're ready to work on the composition of our poster. In the next lesson, I will show you how to choose images and edit them without compromising their integrity. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. Cleaning up images before using them is a key step when working in design. Using non-destructive tools are essential to keep the integrity of an image. In this lesson, we will take a look at layer masks, which can be used to hide and reveal portions of an image on a layer below. This is helpful if you're using a file outside of Photoshop, let's say Illustrator or InDesign. Let's take a look. We mentioned at the beginning of this tutorial that we could try having the fish overlay the type. For that, we need to mask out all the fish images. In this case, we will choose a few images and we'll start dropping them on our Photoshop file. You will notice that I have a few more images than the ones that we started with. And I've highlighted these and downloaded a few more because we need more options. So for example, I believe these images will work better for our poster since the main topic of our poster is motion and color. So if we're talking about motion, I'll highlight these three images. These are great, but they're not the best for a poster because the fish are moving left to right. As opposed to these other images, they're moving upwards and diagonally. So we will start with these images. So let's go into our Photoshop file and don't forget to save your file. So I'll save mine under Downloads, Typographic Poster, Format Photoshop, and save, and then we can continue to save later with Command S because you don't want to lose the file should your computer shut down or if it freezes. So let's head over back to here and we will drop this image here. You will notice that this will open Camera Raw, and Camera Raw is a tool from Photoshop that will allow you to change a few settings before you even go into Photoshop, but we'll just click OK for this. Press Enter, and we have our image on a layer. So we want to create a layer mask so we can delete the background here. Head over to your Layers panel to the bottom and click on Layer Mask. And that will create another layer linked to our main layer. So this is your layer mask. There are two ways of masking an image. And the first one is by using the brush tool. So head over to the toolbar and select the brush tool or B on your keyboard. Right click on the document and set the hardness to 100. So this is setting the brush to be more like this one over here rather than a softer edge. And that's better to work on the edges of the fish. Click on the document to exit, and then you will see that there is nothing happening yet. That's because we need to make sure that the foreground and background color are in black and white, but that we're using black as a foreground color. You can do that by clicking here or by pressing X on your keyboard. So now that we have X on our keyboard, we're selecting our layer mask, and now we can start working on the image. You will notice that there are these small ridges on the brush, and that's because the brush is too far apart from the next stroke. So head over to the window on the menu bar and select brush. And here we can play with the spacing. So if we want the brush to be further apart, so for example like that, or if we want it to be closer together, and that will give us a more seamless look. So for this course, we need it to be at 1%. And we can go ahead and mask our image. We can use the zoom tool, Command Z, and click to get closer into the details. You can go into the edges. You can make the brush smaller or bigger by using the opening and closing brackets. So the opening brackets will make the brush smaller, and the closing bracket will make the brush bigger. So let's zoom out. So that's one way of doing this. The second way of masking an image is by using the wand tool. So you can hit W on your keyboard or head over to the toolbar and hold a click if you're using the quick selection tool and just select the magic wand tool. And what you want to do is click on the big areas of color. So we're lucky that we have this image with a black background, so we can click anywhere and it will select all around the fish. If you want to add to the selection, so for example, these two spaces, hold down Shift until you see the plus sign come up and click in those two areas. And then you want to hit Command I on your keyboard, and what this will do is it will invert what we have selected. And then hit Command D to deselect. And using the zoom tool again, going closer, and here you have the option to use again the wand tool. Hold down Shift and select the smaller spaces, and again Command I and Command D to deselect. Now this is not perfect, but it is a step closer to what we need. You can also use the brush, so change to the brush tool and let's make the brush smaller, and then we can start brushing away here for the details. And you can get as detailed as you want. There is no right or wrong. Of course, the more detail that you get, the better the image that you'll be able to work with. Also keep in consideration that we can reveal the parts that we have hidden. So for example, let's go back to the brush tool, but this time we need to have white as a foreground selected. And we can reveal, again, a few places that way. So if we deleted something by accident, don't panic, because we will be able to bring those back. So let's select another image. Let's hide this layer. You can do so by clicking there on the eye. And let's select another image. Click OK. Enter. And let's do the same thing. Add a layer mask. Use the wand tool and we can select this. Now, I will show you how we can refine the edges. You see that there is this slightly dark line around the fish, and that's because of the dark background. And we can try and get rid of this. Head over to the layers, and on the layer mask, right click and select Refine Mask. Under View, you can select different backgrounds. Whichever you prefer to work on, you can select it. I prefer overlay, so that way I see the edges better. So what I like to do is going to Shift Edge first, but we can select the zoom tool so we can get a little bit closer. hold down space to move the board. And here we will start. You can see a slight difference already, right? There to there. So I will leave it at -60. And then I might want to smooth things out a little bit. Let's see how it looks. That makes the edges a little bit smooth. And maybe feather just a touch. But just a touch, don't do it too much, because then you will get something like that. You will lose some of the definition. So you just want maybe 7 pixels seems like a bit too much. So let's see, 0.3. That's perfect. And then contrast, we'll just leave it at 0. And I'm happy with that. That's not too bad, especially because we have a black background. We don't need to work too much on this, but we will have the type going behind it. So there will be places where we will need to go back and maybe use the brush tool to just work on the details. So click OK. So I will hide this layer and we can move on to another image. So I'll bring this one in. And you will see we are not getting the camera raw for this one, which is totally fine. And again, let's add a layer mask, use the wand tool, and press Command I, and you will notice that there is this missing. So that's because that part was probably too dark and the magic wand tool also selected it. So let's get the brush, select the brush tool with the white as a foreground, and we can go on working on that detail a little bit better. Same over here. And then also this line. So let's change the foreground to black. And we have a pretty good image here. We can work on the details a little bit later when we have the letters going behind it, and then we will know if we want to work, for example, on this detail or this detail over here, or maybe we won't need to because, you know, maybe the letters might be here. So we have all of our images here. We have 3 fish. And yeah, see, you can see that there is some black there, so we can always go back and work on that because it won't delete the actual pixels. You just have to make sure that you're working on the layer mask and not on the original images. Now we have 3 masked out images, and we can decide later on when we're composing the poster if we either need a 4th image or if we need to exchange one of these for another. Now it's time to play with typography. In the next lesson, we will dive into typography and how to use the character and paragraph panels. I'll see you there. Hi there, and welcome back to this course. We already worked on cleaning up our images. In this lesson, I will show you the ins and outs of the character and paragraph panels in Photoshop. We will also talk about hierarchy as we add type details to our poster. So let's take a look. First, we need to hide our images here that we've cleaned up on the lesson before. So head over to the Layers panel and click on the eye icon to hide them. And let's head over to the toolbar and select the text tool. It's right here, or you can press T on your keyboard. And now we need to bring up the characters and paragraph panel. And you can do so by going to the options bar and click on this icon. Looks like a folder. And there is a character and paragraph panel. You can also do so by going to the menu bar, click Type, Panels, and we have both options there. Or you can also head to Window, and we have here Characters, and paragraph. And you will notice that we have more options here compared to the options bar at the top. So let's type something and see what we can do. Head over to the toolbar and select the Move tool. And to resize this element, press Command T. But press Shift on your keyboard so you can resize this evenly. So this is a pretty good size. Press Enter to exit. And let's go over the character panel. So here we have our font options. To the right, we have the font family. Now you have to keep in consideration that not this whole family will be available in every single font. It really depends on the designer who designed the font to see what they included. Normally, they will have a regular and bold and an italic version. So we have this family that has a variation in thickness. So let's select book or heavy. Down here we have a few options that if you hover over, you can see the left and right arrows, and you can already alter a few things. You click and drag to either side. So this is the size. This is the leading, which is the spacing in between the lines of text. And maybe we can make that a little tighter. Here's the kerning. That's the space. Let's see. That's the space in between two characters. So you have to go back onto the type tool if you weren't there already and click on any in between two characters and you can alter that. We can also enter a value. Then we also have the tracking, which is the letter spacing in a group of letters. So here I will make this a little bit smaller so you can see what is happening here. There we go. Below we have the vertical and horizontal scale. So we can play with that by making the selection wider or taller. Let's go back to normal here. Here we have the baseline shift. And for that, we need to go back into the type tool. Let's see. There. Let's select a character. And we can go positive or negative. This is useful when you're working maybe with something related to chemistry or numbers. Down here we have a few more options. We have the fake bold and the fake italic, which are useful when you select a font that doesn't have these two options. So those are great. We already have the all caps activated. We have the small caps. And we have the superscript and the subscripts. So these are useful for when you're working with numbers or anything related to chemistry. There we go. And then we also have the underline and the strike through. So we have quite a few options here to play with. Let's try to go back to our initial setting. Down here we have the special features or open type features. And these are options that are not available for every single font. It really depends on what font we're using and what the designer included into the family. So the reason that we chose BW stretch is because it has alternates. And here you see these two buttons already activated, but these are they don't have anything because it's not included in the font. But if we go over here to the stylistic alternates, you can see that we have other options for some of the characters, not all of them, and that will become really useful when we're creating our poster and we want to, just add some quirkiness. Now let's take a look at the paragraph panel. First, we need to delete the layer that we're on. So drag the layer onto the trash can and select the type tool. This time, create a text box. So click and drag on the page and copy and paste any kind of text that you have. my text has the same settings that we put on the previous layer. So Command A to select the whole text. And let's go back to something like that will be fine. And let's select book here. And it's looking just a little bit too tight. There we go. Let's head over to the paragraph panel. Here we have basic options like align left, align center, align right, and then the justified options. Let's go back to align left. Below we have the indent options. So indent the left margin, the right margin, which will do the opposite. And then we can also indent the first line of a paragraph. Down here we have options to add a space before the paragraph or after a paragraph. And last we have the hyphenate box, which will break out the words. So if we deactivate it, the words will just go to the next line. And if we activate it, then it will hyphenate each of the words. Now let's work on our headline. So I will delete the layer. And on a previous lesson, we mentioned that we would like to use either aquatic life in color or aquatic life in motion. So I'll type aquatic life in motion. I feel like that will be a lot of fun to play with. So Command T, hold down Shift to resize evenly. And let's see, let's go with heavy. Let's use all caps and use the alternates. So that, let's see, let's try to divide these into lines. There we go, aquatic life in motion. And we'll see later what works better for us or what doesn't. So this will be our headline. Let's talk about hierarchy. So hierarchy is a way of organizing and formatting type in a way that the reader can see what is most important on a page. And this will make it easier for them to navigate through the layout at a glance and find information that they need really quickly. This often is done by using different colors or sizes and even different typefaces. So creating 3 levels of typography is perfect to establish hierarchy. This can improve the design aesthetic of the poster while still keeping it readable. We have already created a level 1 typography that will be our headline, and this should be the most visible element on the page. The level 2 typography will help organize the poster into a different section, and it shouldn't stand out as much as the level 1, but it should guide the viewers somewhere. For instance, we can add a date here. Let's type 18th to 25th of March. And let's take the alternate out. Press Command T to make this bigger. And hold down Shift to evenly resize. Press Enter. And we need to create some kind of contrast here. So instead of heavy, maybe we can use regular. That's perfect. Let's move on to level 3 typography. And this is where the meat of the design is. This is where the longer text resides. It is usually details. We need to keep this highly legible because the type size will be smaller than the first 2 levels. On your keyboard, press T to select the text tool. And let's add a curator here. So let's make up a name. And let's add an address, a country, and a postal code, and a website. So aquatic life in motion, maybe the National Aquarium.com. So here we're creating contrast using sizes and the different family font families that we have here. Now we have quite a few layers, and to move the layers, you don't necessarily have to go back to the layers panel to move the specific element. You can press down Command on your keyboard, select the element, and you can move them around. Now we have our 3 elements here with our 3 levels of typography, and we have our 3 images that we cleaned up on the lesson before. And we're ready to move on to the next lesson where I will show you how to arrange these elements within our poster. So I'll see you there. Hi everyone, welcome back to this course. We have worked on getting separate elements of our poster ready. We have created a grid, prepared the images, and created typographical elements. Now it is time to work on our composition. This is the part where all the separate elements that we worked on previously come together as one cohesive design. In this lesson, we will create 2 different but very strong compositions using the same elements. We will talk about focal points, white space, and balance. Let's dive in. So head over to the Layers panel, down to create a new adjustment layer or new fill, and select Solid Color. And because we have so many colors with the fish, we don't want to make it too busy, and we want them to jump out of the page. So I am going to stick with black. Click OK. Perfect. And now let's activate our typography. And you can notice that we can't see anything because they are in black. So select one of the layers and press down Shift to select all 3 and click on another type layer. Head over to a Characters panel, click on the color, and we're going to make these white because again, we don't want them to take away too much from the images of the fish. We have our rule of third grid here, and this is a great way to start the composition because it gives us a quick guide as to where the focal points are. And the focal points will help the viewer find the most important piece of the design. This is a great way to draw attention. So on our grid, the focal points will be these 4 points right here because this is where the lines intersect. Now you don't have to always use them, but we should take advantage of this. I am going to hide a couple of things here just so we can see what we're doing. Let's select that one layer. And we can start perhaps with something along these lines. And we can already see that the margin lines are being really useful to align things. We have our date. Let's see. There we go. Press Command to change the layer directly from the page. And perhaps we can place that here. We can have the viewer's eyes jumping from one element to another, and maybe have this right here. So that's balanced. It's creating a nice balanced design. We can see that the design is neither falling too much on this side or this side. And the way to create balance, think of each element as having a weight to them. And you can almost feel the design falling over. So for example, if we have this over here, you can almost feel the design too heavy on one side and there's maybe too much white space on this side. So let's bring up our lines again. There we go. Let's align it that way. And now let's bring up the fish. So right now they're quite a bit too big. So hold down Shift and select the 3 layers, Command T to transform, and hold down Shift to resize. And you can also hold down Shift and Option. Let's see. To resize everything towards the center. And press Enter to exit. So again, let's select one fish and then we can start placing everything. So like I said, we have 4 focal points here. And maybe we can place one of the fish here to create a little bit of tension. Here, maybe something like this would work. Just falling off the page. And I wouldn't really place it to the center because then that really grounds the poster, then it makes it too centered. And we want the eyes to be jumping a little bit. We want to create something exciting. Let's see, maybe something along these lines. That's not too bad. Let's see, maybe we can resize this fish right here, just so that way it doesn't scream too much, and then resize this one over here a little bit bigger, just because the headline is there and we want to create some kind of hierarchy. So maybe there, and we could have this one maybe just a little bit bigger but lower, just off the page. Let's see, maybe right here. That's not too bad. There we go. That's great. And this one, we can just resize it a little bit more. So let's see. So we have a focal point here, and we are already utilizing 2 sections of the grid. And we have another focal point here. We could even bring this one a little bit down. Let's see. Yeah, so that way the top, there is more negative space at the top here. This is good to provide clarity and some balance into the complicated parts of the poster. So if things are getting a little bit busy here, it's good to have some white space and give it some breathing room. So that's our first poster, and I think I'm really liking this one. So let's save this, press Option Command S to save as a copy, and let's put Typographic Poster 1 and save it in the same folder that you had saved your original poster. So let's save that one. Okay. Let's hide our photo layers again. There we go. And maybe let's do these as well and bring up the grid, Command semicolon. Let's press Command T to transform, and maybe we can fill the width of the poster with the text. And maybe we can make these last 2 lines align with the margin. So press T to go back into the text tool. Select the last 2 lines, and let's resize here. And let's see what we can do. Maybe just a hair more. Maybe 122. There we go. Let's see. And that seems pretty good. Maybe just add a little bit more leading just to that line. And let's go back on this one. Let's see. Sometimes the lines will be different, the setting, just because there are characters that go under the main line. So that looks pretty good. Now let's go back to our level 2 and 3 typography. So let's bring up our grid, and maybe we can do something like that. Let's see. Or maybe we can bring this one down here. And that looks pretty good. This is a very grounded, very good grounded poster. And you can see there's balance here, but it is not center balanced, because this would be the center. This is more of an asymmetrical balance because of this. These 2 elements are not really centered here. So what I like to do sometimes is to zoom in, and from the ruler, just drag down and create a guide to the top of this. And maybe we can see here it's not quite aligned. There we go. And I like to resize this element here just to create alignment, just so it doesn't look too out of place. So I'm going to align it to the height. There we go. And maybe if we want to fill up this section right here, this section, what we can do is just add a little bit of tracking, just a tiny bit. That might be too much, maybe 35. maybe 30. There we go. Perfect. So that's aligned. You can see it's aligned to the sides. It's aligned to the height here. And now let's bring up the fish. And maybe we can do something interesting here. Try to weave the fish through the letters. So let's see. Command T to transform. Hold down Shift and Option to transform and to resize towards the middle. So double click. And something like this might work. We need to just maybe play with the layer mask here. And we can try to weave it through. And let's see, maybe we can do something with this. Something along these lines here. Perfect. And let's see. Maybe we can make this a little bit smaller. Just to have some kind of variety. And have it through here. These two fish are kind of going the same way. I wonder if maybe one of the other options that we had from the beginning could maybe work better, but let's see. Another option would also be to maybe divide the lines differently and have aquatic life in motion rather than the other way. This is good because the way that we read the headline is aquatic life in motion and not aquatic life in motion. So that's always good to play with as well. So let's bring up our grids here. Go back to the text tool and just resize again. There we go. And we can make this one bigger. And therefore we will need to add some more leading as well. Let's see. So something like that might work. Let's go back with our grids and maybe turn off the fish layers and less lighting here. So we need these two have two different lightings. So maybe we can set only one and then go from there. Let's see. Just a touch less. And let's bring back the fish layers. Let's see. Maybe we could have this one right around here. And then this one maybe right around here. That maybe just a little bit. Command T to transform, and then if you want to rotate, head over to one of the corners and you will be able to rotate. Maybe like that. Just a touch smaller. Just because if it touches the O, it will create some kind of just unpleasant tension. It's just barely touching, and it should either be touching or not at all. There we go. And then maybe this one we can play with this. What we could also do is maybe change aquatic life in color. Color is a shorter word than motion, and maybe we will be able to get a little bit more height on the last line and have the fish a little bit lower because it's maybe too concentrated here and it's getting a bit busy. So let's try to change that to aquatic life in color. And let's go back again to the grid. Let's see there, and add more leading. Just a hair more. There we go. And let's see how that works. And we can do the same for these other fish. Maybe let's bring them up over on the layers panel over the type layers, and we can see that how it will work better rather than having them on the back. And then we can go into details and having to fix the layer masks so the fish can go through the letters. So let's save this one and let's press Option Command S. And let's save this as Typographic Poster 2. Save, click OK. And now we have two very strong compositions. In the next lesson, I will show you how we can refine the design. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. In the last lesson, we created two compositions and we will choose one to move forward with. In this lesson, we will refine our final design. We will use adjustment layers, and these are very useful non-destructive layers that adjust images without harming the pixels. Let's get started. We can start by analyzing the compositions we created in the last lesson. We can see the composition on the left that it is very well balanced. If we draw an imaginary line right through the middle, we have the same amount of elements. We have 3 elements here, we have 3 elements on the right. So it's a very well balanced poster. We've created imaginary lines that go from here to here to here, and we have the fish scattered around the page. There is some breathing room around, but it doesn't feel too put together. Maybe it needs a little bit more work. The second composition, it is impactful because the images are concentrated on the top of the poster, and that makes the headline stronger and it adds a sense of hierarchy. The elements work much better together. There is a good amount of breathing space between the two groups of elements. The information is not too scattered. It is clear and concise. It's at the bottom. And there are only 2 main points on the poster, and that is really good because it provides clarity. The eyes of the viewer go directly from the top to the bottom. So we can see that the second poster is better put together, is equally balanced, but it is just much more impactful visually. So we will go for the second poster, the one on the right. You can go ahead and open it. I have it right here. And maybe we can start by cleaning up the images a little bit better. So head over to the Layers panel and select any of the images. And make sure that you're selecting the layer mask. Select the brush tool from the toolbar or be on your keyboard. Right click and make sure that you're working with hardness 100%. We already have the black foreground color here. And we can start cleaning up things. We can also, so we can see better, we can deactivate maybe the color fill. Let's go back and activate the color fill layer, and that looks much better. And now we can go down, we can zoom in and go into the details. So for example, we can work on this image. Let's go back to the brush tool and just start by brushing the really obvious lines that we have there. If it's really useful, maybe use hardness 0 so we don't create really harsh changes between the background and the image that we have here. So it's a little bit more subtle. And let's go back right here. And you can see just a little bit makes the biggest difference. And remember that you can resize the brush by pressing the opening and the closing brackets. Now that we've cleaned up our layers, we can maybe start weaving the fish like we mentioned in one of the lessons before. And we can do so maybe by moving this part of the fish back behind the C and maybe try to do something here with the E. So in order to do that, head over to the Layers panel and select the headline. Duplicate the layer by pressing Command J and move the layer to the very top of the Layers panel. And we will follow the same procedure as we did with the fish and the layer mask. So head over to the bottom of the layers panel and click on the Add Layer Mask button. Select the brush tool from your keyboard, press B, or head over to the toolbar, and it is right here. And remember that you can resize the brush by pressing opening or closing brackets. So we have ours right there. And we can start brushing away. Remember that you need the black foreground color. And we can do that maybe right here, right there. We can even move the fish just a little bit lower. There. Let's go back. Perfect. And maybe let's move it a little bit to the left. And now let's do the same right over here. So let's select that fish. And I just want to move it a little bit to the left and up. There we go. And go back to the layer. And let's do the same. So we can do something along those lines. That's perfect. We still can see the I and the C. We can tell that those are the letters. And now let's work on this one down here. Let's click on back there and perfect. Now looking at the direction the fish are floating from and going to, I remember we had a different image here that might work better to have at the bottom. And this is the thing about design. You will always go back and forth trying to decide what images work better for your composition. So let's go back, and this is the image I'm talking about. So let's see, let's bring it down here. And I feel like this might work better just because the way this the fish is floating, especially this part here, works better with our composition. So let's add a layer mask on the layers panel. Let's select the magic wand tool, W. Select the background and press Command I to invert the background and Command D to deselect. And let's hide that fish. And let's see, let's move this one down here just so we don't mess anything up. And Command T to transform, hold down Shift and Option to transform or resize evenly and towards the center. And let's press Command T one more time, and maybe we can rotate this way. And maybe we can lower it a little bit more. Let's see. That works better. See how we're creating sort of a circle or oval that goes around and around. So that's perfect. So we can get rid of that other image we had. And we can start working on our new image. And just let's work on the details really quickly. Perfect. Now that we have successfully mixed the fish with our headline and created that sense of depth, we can start playing with the colors. For example, we can start changing the hue of the fish, or maybe getting rid of this blue cast that we have here. So let's start with that and head over to the layers panel, select that fish, go down to the bottom of the layer to the create new fill and or adjustment layer and select hue and saturation. Here we have the properties panel. What makes this perfect is the fact that we won't be destroying any of the original pixels. We can work from here and change the hue or change the saturation and change the lightness of the image. We can also select specific colors. So for example, if we want to change the blue cast here, select cyans and change the saturation. So for me, that would be a good amount to get rid of the blue hue there. Now, I would like to increase the saturation a little bit more. So head over to Masters, and here we can increase the saturation just so it doesn't get lost. Now you have to keep in mind that anything under the adjustment layer will be affected. If you want to only make the change on the layer below, we need to create a clipping mask. In order to do that, hold down Option and hover over the layer until you see the square symbol with the arrow pointing down and click. You can unclip this mask also by doing the same. Hold down Option until you see the symbol with the line through it, and you'll unclip it. Another way of doing this is by right-clicking on the layer and create clipping mask, and the same release clipping mask. So here we just want the layer to affect the layer below. Now let's take care of the other two images. So again, we can add an adjustment layer, go to the bottom, create a new fill or adjustment layer, hue and saturation. And we can do the same. We can play with the image and see what works best for us. Maybe we need more saturation or less saturation. Here, I just want to take a little bit, lower the saturation just a tiny little bit. And remember that we want to clip the mask. And here we have the hue. We can maybe make the color a little bit more to the green side. Just a tiny little bit. And we can see the difference right there. It's just very subtle. And I will also like to add an adjustment layer to this fish, and just to lower the saturation because it's taking away from these two fish. So let's head over here, hue saturation, and just lower the saturation just a tiny little bit. Maybe we can increase the saturation on this backup, just so they have the same amount of color. Perfect. Let's collapse the properties panel. And we can already see that we fixed the intensity of the color. It's much more harmonious. Let's head over to the layers panel and see what other adjustment layers we have available. So maybe we can add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, and we can already see things changing just by moving things a little bit more. Now for this layer, we won't need to create a clipping mask because we want the change to affect all of the layers. So we can already see how the colors are much more vibrant. Maybe let's lower the brightness a little bit here. Let's see. That's much better. So we've learned the basics of adjustment layers. We've cleaned up our images and integrated them into the headline. And in the next lesson, we will touch on part 2 of refining your design, and that will be adding shadows to our poster to enhance the depth of field. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. In this lesson, we will continue finessing the smaller details of our composition by adding shadow to the images. This will enhance the depth of field, and there are 2 ways of doing this. Let's take a look. First, let's organize our layers into one group. So head over to the last hue and saturation layer that you created, hold down Shift, and select the last fish layer so we can select all of the fish layers with their own hue and saturation adjustment layer, and drag them towards on the layers panel towards the folder, and this will create a group. To add shadows, click on the layer before the group. So for me, it would be this one. And on the layers panel, head to the bottom and click on the button Create New Layer. Select the brush tool from the toolbar or press B on your keyboard. Right-click on the document and make sure the hardness is set to 0. And let's start with 300 pixels as a size. And then we can resize with the opening and closing brackets. Set the foreground color to black head over to the options bar and set the opacity to maybe 10%, and let's see what we can do here. Now, remember we're trying to create shadows on the fish, so we want to be subtle. So I'll start brushing just under some of the fish, and you can see it just slightly there. Let's see. You can see the difference now. And we want something just subtle. We don't want it to be too harsh. So I will continue doing this for all three of them. Now we want to add some shadows over the fish, and that will be because the characters are overlapping the fish. So head over to the group that we created on the layers panel and add a new layer. Select the brush tool again and start brushing over the characters that are over the fish. If you start getting things like this because of the brush stroke, that means that we have to go back to the layer mask on the text layer. Select the brush tool and make sure that you have white as a foreground, so press X and set the opacity to 100% and start brushing away and just cleaning up these areas. So you will see right away disappearing. Let's zoom out and let's see what the difference is here. There we go. So let's go back to the shadow layer we created. And let's zoom in to this area here. Select the brush tool again. Set the opacity to 10%. And let's start brushing away. So it will be just very subtle. Feel free to activate and deactivate the layers so you can see where the difference is. I will rename my two layers so I don't get confused, and you can do so by clicking on the layer, the writing, double click, and I will rename this to Shadow 1 and this layer to Shadow 2. And the group I will rename to Images. Now I will deactivate the two shadow layers that we created, and I can show you what is the second way of doing this. Head over to the images group we created and click on the arrow to open the folder. Select any image layer, right click, and head over to blending options. On the left side of the panel, select the drop shadow option. And something useful to have here is the preview option. Make sure that it is checked, and you can already see what the difference is. If you uncheck it and check it, you can see where the shadow will be. Now here we can play with the distance first to see how long of a shadow we want, and the spread, and also the size, so how much you want it to disperse. So something like that would be good. I have 15, 20, and 51 pixels, but I want to lower the opacity just a little bit. Here we can choose where the light is coming from, so I think I would like it to come from this way. And click OK. Now we can copy the style of this layer and paste it onto the other two images. So right click on the layer that we just worked on, select Copy Layer Style. I will collapse this, and then I will select one of the other layers, paste layer style, and we can already see the difference here, and I will do the same with the other layer, and we can already see it there. Now I will close again the group, and now we can take care of the shadow from the characters. If we copy and paste the same layer style onto the text layer, it won't work, and I will show you why. So I'll right click there and paste layer style. And the reason that we're getting this weird shadow is because I will deactivate our original headline. It's because the way that we have created the layer mask just won't work. So we need to, let's see, I will go back. So we need to create this extra shadow 1 layer. That will be the only way to make the character's shadow work. Whichever way you use, you're sure to take this poster to another level. It is all about the details. We've come to the end of the design process of our poster. In the next lesson, we will prepare our file for professional printing. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. In the last lesson, we finished the design process of our poster. Now we're on to the next step. Preparing and sending a file to a professional printer can be a daunting task. In this lesson, we will learn how to add bleeds, crop marks, and how to export a professional PDF ready for print. Let's take a look. Bleed is the area of the artwork that is extended beyond the actual dimensions of the document. It is used to avoid strips of white paper showing on the edges of your print in case they move or get misaligned when cutting to size. Usually the size of the bleed is 3 millimeters per side. In our case, the background of the poster is black, so we need to extend this 3 millimeters around the edges. That makes 6 millimeters to the height and the width. Let's activate the grids by pressing Command semicolon. And we need to draw guides to the edge of the poster. You can do so by going to the ruler. And if you don't have the ruler, Command R on your keyboard and drag, and you will automatically get a guide. And you can drag these to the edge on each side. This is so we know where the edge of the poster is. Head over to the menu bar and select Image, Canvas Size, and let's change the units to millimeters. Let's add 6 millimeters to the width and the height. So the width would be 215.97 and the height will be 303.1. Here under Anchor, you can choose where you want the width and the height to be added. So for example, if you want only the bottom height to be added, you can do that. But here we want to add all around the document. So we will leave this as it is and click OK. And you will notice the black background extending by 3 millimeters, right, all around the edges. Now we need to add crop marks, and these are lines that sit around the edge of the document to show the printer where the document needs to be cut. The crop marks are usually 0.25 points in thickness. And for this, we need to add an additional 5 millimeters around the poster, and this should be over white background. So let's do the same procedure. Drag guides from the ruler, and this is where we'll know where the document or the bleeds end. Head over to the menu bar, select Image, Canvas Size. Remember, we are adding 5 millimeters to each side of the poster, so that will be a total of 10 millimeters to the width and the height. Let's change the units to millimeters, and let's change the width to 225 and the height to 313. Select the canvas extension color to white. Now you won't be able to see this yet because we have a color fill black, but there is a way to make it work. Let's click OK and let's take a look. Now you can see the 5 millimeters around the edge. Now head over to the toolbar and select the rectangular marquee tool, or M on your keyboard. And here we need to select the bleed. So that would be the last guides that we created because that's the edge of the bleed. Select on the layers panel the color fill layer. Now make sure that you're selecting the layer mask. Press Shift Command I. This is to invert the selection. And press Command I. This is to invert what we have selected. Press Command D to deselect. I will deactivate my guides so we can see better. And you might notice some black going on the edges, and this is from our images. So let's go back to the folder with the images that we created, and we just need to clean those up. Let's bring back our guides. So I'll zoom here so we can see better the detail. And the first guide out here, this is where the bleed area is. So this is our insurance that when the document is cut, we won't get the white stripe from the paper. The second guide here, this is where the crop marks will be. So right here and right here. And this is so the printer knows where the document actually ends, the real dimension. So head over to the layers panel and select the last layer. And from the toolbar, select the line tool. And if it's not selected, hold down click and you will get all the other options. Here we need the line tool. And create a line that fits in the white area. Head over to the options bar and select black for the stroke. Set the width to 2.5 millimeters and set the height to 0.25 millimeters. And now we have one of our crop marks. To duplicate the shape, press Option and let's move it over here. Command T to transform. Hold down Shift so you can rotate the element evenly. There we go. 90 degrees. Press Enter. Go back to the Move tool, V on your keyboard, and let's place this on the other crop mark. So I will deactivate my guides and you can see. So we have both of our crop marks here. Now, on the Layers panel, select both layers, both shape layers where our crop marks are. Right-click and select Merge Shapes. Let's zoom out of our document. Press Command semicolon to bring out the other guides. And we will duplicate the layer that we created. So again, press Option and drag, and we have another set of layers. Let's zoom in, Command T to transform, and let's rotate this 90 degrees. Enter. Let's go back to the Move tool, and we have our second set of crop marks there. And now we need to do the same for the bottom. Let's deactivate our grids, and now we have all of our crop marks. Now, if you want to organize the layers properly, let's select all the crop marks and drag them towards the folder at the bottom to create a group. And let's rename this crop marks. And now we're ready to export a professional PDF for print. Head over to the menu bar and select File, Save As. Set the name of your poster and where you would like it to be saved. And under Format, select Photoshop PDF. Let's save without layers. This will make the file not so heavy, especially since you're sending it to print. And make sure as a copy is checked. Click Save and click OK. Under Adobe Preset, make sure that you're selecting PDF X1A 2001 and Save PDF. And let's check if we have the PDF document correctly. So here we have PDF document, preview, and you can see that we have the document with the crop marks, and this is ready to print. You can save a copy of this file with the crop marks by going to File and Save As. And we will save as a Photoshop file. So we can put crop marks at the end and save. We've covered how to prepare Photoshop files to send to a professional printer. In the next lesson, I will show you how to prepare files for web. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. With the popularity of social media, it is necessary to create a digital version of our print design to be shared. In this lesson, we will learn how to export and resize files to be used online. Let's take a look. In the last lesson, we saved a copy of the file with crop marks, and that's the one that I have open right now. But for this, we need the original file. If you don't need to change the dimensions, then we can go ahead and save. Head over to the menu bar and select File, Save for Web. Head over to the right side of the panel and you can choose the file that you need. So for example, I will be using JPEG. You can change the quality of the JPEG. So for example, I can have mine as very high. And here we can change the size through pixels. So if you need a specific width, so for example, I can have a width of 800 pixels. It will automatically change the height. And this will help to lower the size of the JPEG. Here you can see roughly what the size is. Some websites have a limit on what size you can upload. So if it is still too high, you can change the quality to maybe high, and that might work. So we can go ahead and save. I'll save my file in the same folder that I've been saving it, and we have a JPEG file here. Click on save. And we have our JPEG file right here ready to be shared. If we need to change the dimensions of the poster and move some elements around, this is how we can do it. On the toolbar, select the crop tool or C on your keyboard. We will change the dimension to 16 by 9, and this is the standard Instagram story size. If you don't have that option, just type 16 by 9 and resize the poster to fit from the very top to the very bottom. Press Enter to apply the crop. And now let's bring the grids by pressing Command semicolon. Now we need to move the two side margins to fit back into the dimensions of the story. So head over to View, New Guide, and type 1 centimeter, orientation vertical. Click OK. And we can get rid of this guide by dragging it into the ruler. Now with this guide, we can measure the final size of the document in centimeters. So let's bring it here, and that is 16.70 centimeters. So the margin will be at 15.70 centimeters. So let's head over to View, New Guide, 15.70 centimeters. Click OK, and there it is, our new margin. Now we want to resize everything to make it fit within the margin. So let's select all of the layers on the layer panel. Select the first one, hold down Shift, and select the last layer on the layers panel. Press Command T to transform, and we can transform this to fit within our new margins. So it'll be right there. Press Enter to exit. And then we can start moving the top of the poster to the very top margin and the bottom to the very bottom margin. So let's select these two, which are the bottom, right there. And then the rest of the poster. Hold down Command if you want to select another layer that is not consecutive to the ones at the top. So right there. And then we can move these to the top. To save a JPEG, head over to File, Save for Web. Select the file that you would like to save it as. For me, it will be JPEG. I'll leave this as high for now. And in image size, I will put 1080. And it will change to 1920 here for the height, and this is the size that we need for Instagram. Now you will see here that the size lowered. If there is any size limit, you can play with these options right here. I'll leave mine as high, save, and I will put here Instagram. Save. Let's head over to our folder. Here we have our Instagram story file to be shared, and we have our regular JPEG here. In this chapter, we've looked at how to prepare files for printing and to be shared online. In the next lesson, we will do a recap of what we've learned in this course. I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. In this course, we created an impactful typographic poster. We learned about the ideation of a poster design all the way to exporting files for printing and sharing on social media. Throughout the lesson, we learned some principles of graphic design, like composition, balance, white space, alignment, hierarchy, and typography. We also learned to work with layer masks, character and paragraph panels, to refine edges, layer styles, clipping mask, adjustment layers, and used some tools from the toolbar. In this course, we have learned all of the basic elements and tricks you need to create your own typographic poster. My name is Laura Keong for Envato Tuts Plus. I hope you enjoyed the course and are ready to try out these new skills on your future projects. Thanks for watching.